Today's episode is brought to you by Fire Facilities. Make training count with their custom-made, all-steel live fire training facilities. Their made-in-the-USA towers and burn rooms are the best for preparing, responding, and surviving the challenges you face every day. Today's guest is Todd Shepherd. Now, Todd is a third-generation firefighter, and he's a 20-year veteran of the fire service. He's also the founder and owner of Forge Fire & Company. He does live fire instruction. He also specializes in forcible entry, search, victim removal, ventilation, building construction, down firefighter rescue, first responder self-defense, and so much more. Now, you may know that Todd was a former MMA fighter, but did you know he's a lifelong martial artist? He's boxed golden gloves, black belt in American Kickboxing, purple belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and also Gracie BJJ Combatives certified. He's a hell of a guy. We have an absolute blast on this podcast, and if you haven't seen the promo for this yet, you got to go find it. It's awesome. So with that, Todd Shepherd. Brother Todd Shepherd, thank you for being on here. I was going over your bio. Of course, I've seen you do other things. And there's something about, I feel like you and I have a lot in common. We share a big background. So, for example, you're a former MMA martial artist, golden gloves, black belt karate and black belt in American kickboxing, purple belt Brazilian jiu-jitsu. The list goes on and on. And much like yourself, I feel like we're connected because I was in marching band in high school. So do you feel like that's a thing? I mean, do you feel the connection, or is it just me?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely getting the vibe. Yeah, we're vibing.
You're getting the vibe.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let me ask you one more thing before we go into it. But I'm about 215. I have zero coordination, very little muscle tone. I cry a lot. And when anybody approaches me, I'll fall into a fetal position and coat myself in urine. Do you think you could take me?
No, I don't want to deal with urine. And actually, that's what worked for me in my fights. I just pissed myself and nobody wanted to touch me. It worked for me too.
Yeah. Or pee on them. Either way, you're having fun, right?
R. Kelly. Yeah.
Sorry, my voice is complete shit. So what are you drinking tonight? Did I see a drink over there? I'm guessing bourbon?
My drink of choice tonight is I'm going to sponsor Gentleman Jack here.
Nice. Can't drink that stuff. I'm from Kentucky, but I cannot drink bourbon or whiskey.
Uh-oh. We might not continue to be friends. I don't know. It's on the fence.
But what if I was able to get you good bourbon cheaper?
Now we're back in.
Boom,
that's
just like that. We're gonna our friendship will ebb and flow throughout the evening. I got a feeling.
Ebb and flow.
Before we get into the fire stuff, honestly, I think it is so cool, all the stuff that you have done with the MMA and the martial art. To me, it's such a dedication. It's such a lifestyle, really. And then I've heard you talk about how it translates so well into the fire service. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
It does. Yeah. I credit a lot of my success to martial arts, and, I probably won't say it as best as like Aaron Fields. He's a fellow one of us as well. And he really hits the nail on the head too. But, I credit a lot of my success in the fire service to martial arts. I'm pretty much a lifelong martial artist, and what it taught me was just the efficiencies and professionalism and the best ways to train that I've really borrowed and gravitated to and tried to transition that to the fire service. With being a former fighter, and I fought pretty heavily for a very long time, very competitively at a pretty high level. And what I kind of learned from those modalities is trying to translate how we can train better in the fire service. And it definitely teaches you mental toughness and structure, which we obviously need in the fire service. So I definitely lend a lot of my success to that for sure.
Is it as much as of a step-by-step process when you're dealing with martial arts or any of that stuff? Is it just that step-by-step process, learning the minutia of every little detail so you can later, put it together later in a fight? Do you feel like that translates very well to like American fire training? Because I know American fire training, a lot of people want to just jump right in and throw everything at it at once. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's correct. It depends on how you're training and what you're trying to get out of the training, whether it's martial arts or whether it's fire training. But I think how they combined and mesh together is, the minutia of it is, if you're trying to specialize in a specific tactic or a specific discipline in firefighting, you're going to break down every discipline systematically and try to hone your skills to become the best person you can be. Obviously, we're not going to be all experts in every type of fire training. Unfortunately, it's just not really possible in our career to really be an expert at every single thing. We just need to have awareness and be good at, a core group of the basics. But, martial arts blending into that is just, what it taught me was just the mental toughness and trying to systematically get better every day. And I think that's what I take away from it, is just always being self-aware of yourself, what your strengths and your weaknesses are, and really trying to focus on your weaknesses. I feel like that makes a person grow much better than always focusing on your strengths.
Do you think there's more ego in the fire service or more ego in martial arts?
Both, and I think they both have come a long way. I think that both industries are very similar, to where now with the internet and social media and the mass awareness and mass opportunities of fire training, we have so many great conferences out there, grassroots conferences, middle of the road conferences, middle-sized conferences, large conferences. There, you can't throw a stone and not hit a fire conference that's good in any part of our country. And with that, coupled with social media and the internet, it's what has happened is, back when the UFC started, it was the whole, discipline versus discipline, and there was this whole theory of what actually would work, and it was more pertaining to what you saw in the movies. Was the flashy stuff was what was thought of that would work. And really, when it boils down now, from then 1990 to now, same with the fire service, now we are in an age where we can prove and get across many planes of opportunities to prove what is working. And that goes across martial arts to fire training. We're able to actually scientifically prove what is working. And in social media, and there's pros and cons to social media, but the internet and just the overall where we are in the age of fire training and the opportunities have really lent itself to the proof of what is working and what is BS, and, ego, there's always going to be ego in both, we can't think in absolutes. And I think where we fall short, or where people get caught up in both industries, is always thinking in absolutes or having a bias. You can't have a bias, and you can't think in absolutes. If you think in absolutes with your tactics, there's nothing we do that's always going to work every single time. And both industries, you see that play out, that dichotomy play out, where once people start thinking in absolutes or have a heavy bias towards one side of training, then you start to see some heavy weaknesses.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that one. I've noticed that for me, the mistakes that I've made in training, I was just recently retired. I was a training officer for the last 11 or 12 years, I forget. But my ego was like huge in it, in a bad way. I was like, I mean, how do I explain it? So like, if people push back on me with good, like, hey, there's a 1,000 ways to skin this cat, I would be like, oh no, this is the way I learned. This is the way I learned in the book. When I first got in the fire service 30 years ago, there was no internet. There was no not a whole lot of conferences, nothing you could really afford to go to, but there was the American Heat videos. And those American Heat videos, you know, as terrible as they were, it was like New York, Boston, Chicago. So stuff that didn't really apply to a smaller town. So I think that's where I kind of got that training scar, is that there's only one or two ways to do things. Thank goodness that just like, you know, I ditched my first wife and got a great second wife. I ditched that horrible thinking. And now, you know, I realize, just like you said, there's absolutely no way to say this is the only way it works, with the exception of maybe water on the fire makes everything better. Maybe that one, but training has really evolved, and I've noticed a huge shift in training. And you'd mentioned the internet. Boy, oh boy, that could be good or bad, right? I mean, like, I have seen some training videos on YouTube that have just been frightening, and there's no science behind it. This is no joke. I'm sure it's still up there. They were trying to figure out, this was several years ago, whether it's better to heel a ladder from underneath or heel it, you know, facing forward. Obviously, you don't want to be underneath. But what they did was they tied. Did you see where they tied it to a lawnmower and pulled it?
I watched the exact same video, and my mind blown. Just couldn't. Yeah.
But you know what's funny? The very next fire I made, somebody tied a rope to a ladder with a lawnmower and pulled it out. I'm just kidding. That never happened. But it's the ability to discern the information you're looking at. That is the big part. You have to be able to look at the information and then know how to verify it. And that's kind of tough. Now, the FSRI, ULFSRI, is an amazing free resource, and you know, ventilation and hose tree mechanics and all that stuff. So it's kind of a one-stop shop, I think. Now, I know all the studies were really focused on water and water mapping, stuff like that, you know, but they've done studies now for search and rescue. They've done a lot of studies on ventilation. I know you're a truckie, so what do you think about some of the new information coming out with ventilation or search and rescue?
Well, I mean, I think you're absolutely right with what you previously said, with just vetting any kind of training, whether it's on the internet, social media, in person. You know, that's a hard process to do until you get pretty experienced and well into your career. You know, I feel bad for some of the new people getting into the fire service with this day and age. You know, like I said, pros and cons. You just touched on that. Social media, internet, it is hard for new people to vet what they're seeing is realistic or efficient or productive or professional training. And some of it, especially if it's geared towards flashiness, they're going to gravitate to that. The young people, the new people in the industry, and that's a tough situation. You know, so ventilation, you know, it's not the end all be all. I'm a huge ventilation fan. You know, it definitely has to be coordinated. Basically what it boils down to is everything has to be coordinated. I mean, let's be real. You know, being real with ourselves, everything has to be coordinated, whether it's, you know, nonverbal coordination, whether it's just you have your set core of guys on a fire scene that are your go-to guys that are just doing it impromptu. They don't need to be told, that they have the forethought of watching what the situation is and sizing up and just doing it, or you're a company officer dictating those tactics to be had. Hopefully it's the first. You know, we want aggressive firefighters making comparable dynamic decisions without always being told. But fact of the matter is, whatever tactic you're doing, you know, it has to be coordinating. And so ventilation's one of those. It really only works. Ventilation only works well if you can size up what you have very well, depend on the stage of the fire, the heaviness of the fire. If you have heavy fire involvement, you have to dictate what are your resources. You know, you have to know your resources as a fire department and quickly discern if you can really accomplish vertical ventilation. And it has to be systematically done with fire attack and search at the same time, and especially fire attack. You know, we cannot ventilate ahead of those tactics, or it's just going to make the situation worse. You know, so, and also just,
Are you sure you're not an engine man? You're sounding like an engine man to me.
I briefly rode on an engine, you know, beginning my career, but I'm not going to say I wasn't a fan. I'm a fan of everything, honestly. I just, you know, people think, oh, Todd, you know, forcible entry, truck ops, but, you know, I'm a fan of everything. I'm a fan of everything that works, and I'm unbiased, and I'm a realist, you know. Let's do what is needed to get the job done and serve the community the best we can. And, you know, you can't deny putting water on the fire. So, you know, assessing a lot of tactics, a lot of your capabilities, a lot of your weaknesses. That's one thing fire departments struggle with, is assessing their weaknesses. Honestly, it's a constant struggle. It sucks. It sucks to tell yourself or tell other people or communicate professionally that, hey, maybe we're not good at this. Maybe we aren't set up well to do this tactic, say vertical ventilation. And with that said, maybe your best bet as a fire department, depending on the situation, is to get water on the fire and search and find victims and remove those victims and forego vertical ventilation or any type of ventilation process, because maybe you just don't have the manpower, maybe you don't have the tools, maybe whatever the case is. But you have to be willing as a fire department to assess those things and be real and be honest with yourself.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things I've heard you talk about is about the blue collar aspect of the job. So, over the years, I've developed this theory, and I'm not saying it's a good theory. Again, I've been married twice, so I'm not saying I come up with gold every time. But for this one, it used to be when I got in the fire service that, you know, you weren't exactly a rocket scientist to become a firefighter. It wasn't looked down upon, but at the same time, it wasn't treated with respect it really deserved. It was all blue collar. These are tradesmen, craftsmen, and the firemen, blah, blah, blah. Well, over the past 30 years, the advances in hazmat and EMS and you know, let's see, rope rescue, swift water, on and on and on. I don't think we're blue collar anymore. We're not white collar. So I think it's like a light blue collar. I think we were the modern fire service firefighter is so intelligent and so able to do so many things at a moment's notice. So the old days of just going in and dragging hose and that, you know, strategies and tactics, everything has changed. And I believe the firefighter is probably one of the more professional people you're going to run across, because we do so much with so little in a short amount of time. And then we got to be able to pivot on a dime. You got to be able to pivot just like that. And I've noticed a huge change in that. One of the things for me, and I love asking people this, is especially truckies. So I know of people that do default vertical ventilation. That's what they do. That's their first line of defense, which I'm not for at all. I mean, if you need to vertically ventilate, do it. Absolutely. Without hesitation. But don't make that your go-to, right? You got to have more tools in your toolbox. But here's my question for you. You do a lot of search and rescue. You do a lot of vertical ventilation. For me in the department I was at, we didn't have high numbers at fires, but we still vertically ventilated. My argument is this, and I don't really have any proof behind this, but it seems like to me, taking those two people off that roof and putting them inside, either searching or moving a line to put the fire out, for smaller departments might be the best idea. It might be the best idea if you don't have a lot of resources. What do you think?
I mean, I agree. You know, there's a part, I think a lot of us can say, if you're not totally biased, I think there's a lot of us that can say that I agree and I disagree, and it just really ultimately depends on the situation. But as a whole, totality, I think that as a smaller department with limited resources, limited manpower, I believe that, you know, obviously life safety is paramount. So you can't always, it can never hurt to default to putting water on the fire and searching for victims. I mean, honest to God truth, it's that simple. If you have the resources and the manpower to get up there and vertically ventilate, great. But, there's a lot of things that go into vertical ventilation, or just any kind of ventilation, where building construction, are you ventilating? Are you able to ventilate in the appropriate area? That's the other thing, is reading the construction. We're not just talking about, simple, lightweight house construction, residential construction. We're really talking, if we really want to broaden our perspective of vertical ventilation, to do it appropriately, we have to talk about a lot of different kinds of construction. We have to talk about the situation and where the fire is, the stage of the fire. Can we even ventilate efficiently where we need to ventilate to appropriately get the response we want to get? And how much time is that going to take to do that? How good are our people to do that? How well trained are they to do that? And that's the stuff you have to be honest with yourself. And if you're not, you're not. So, it never hurts to be absolutely 100% efficient, get the hose in, get water on the fire, search, do a very good primary search, a very good secondary search. And I think that can never hurt. I mean, there's always going to be people that are going to argue to the nth degree of you're wrong and I'm right, or vice versa. But the fact of the matter is, again, we're not thinking in absolutes. I'm not going to be the guy that's going to sit here and tell you an absolute. I'm not going to say we have to do ventilation, we have to do this. It really depends on the situation in the department. But I agree with you that if we get better at, stretching lines efficiently, fighting fire, being aggressive with our tactics, aggressive on searching off the line, while we're stretching a line and advancing a line and fighting fire, then we're a very productive fire company. And that goes a long way as well, with limited resources.
Absolutely. But you just said something that you don't hear a lot of people pushing, is searching off the line. Usually you hear people doing one or the other. You got engine work, you got truck work, but the ability to search off the line and use the long and short side and all that, you just don't hear enough of that. And I think that some of these departments can get, and I know I was absolutely this way, compartmentalized, where you think that you have this job and this is your only job. This is it, and then these other guys have this job, when in fact you should be able to move about, easily throughout each other's, or on the fire ground, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I like what you said there. Let me ask you this: when it comes to search and rescue as a truckie, and we haven't even touched forcible entry yet. We're going to get there. But when you do search and rescue, let me ask you this: do you stick to the wall, or do you go at it with your tick? Okay, nice.
No. We can no longer make the excuse. When I went to the fire academy, 25 years ago, it was, the whole bullshit of, we're allowed to cuss on here, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, we can't cuss. We cannot cuss. We can't say fuck or shit.
The whole bullshit of searching and grabbing people's ankles and crawling on our hands and knees and being in contact with the wall and being in contact with your training person and your cadre. That just is, it's complete bullshit. And
it is.
They trained us to be a liability that we had to then untrain ourselves with those training scars. But if you're in this day and age, if you're still training on your hands and knees, and I don't want to say this to be rude, I'm not being an asshole, but there are people out there still doing it. It pains me to see it when it's posted on social media. I just cringe. But like searching on your hands and knees with your head down, and touching the wall, doing a left hand or a right hand search pattern is complete garbage. It is. In this day and age, we have
tripod. We've
gone so far. We've proven so far past this for many years with the science and the tactics of what works, that You don't need to be on a wall. You can be oriented without being in touch with something. And that lends itself with appropriate size up, appropriate experience, appropriate training, understanding your environment, understanding your capabilities. All those things lend itself into being a very efficient search, creating a search profile that you can then be quick and efficient and conduct a very good, thorough primary search without having to rely on being oriented to a specific thing like a wall or a person. And we have to get way past, we're way past that, but we have to get other people that are way past that.
It is a tough thing to teach older firefighters, the tripod position and being able to move about the room, utilizing your crew to help direct you if you need it. It's so much faster, so much better. And I have seen, oh, excuse me, I just burped. I don't know if I'm going to cut that out. I might leave it in there. It's a pretty good burp. It stinks pretty bad. But I've seen people, like I'll be teaching a class that has nothing to do with tactics or strategies. And then I'll see guys go in and they'll exhibit these horrible, they'll go to the left and they'll start doing that and they'll grab onto the boot. And so I'm going to brag and damn them at the same time, because a lot of times these are older chiefs, that haven't been on a truck in a while or whatever, but they're taking a class. So I got to give them props, but I see that sometimes. I'm like, or a 30-degree power cone, in live fire. I'm like, don't stop it. But there's no excuse anymore for I'm sorry, you're a lazy firefighter if you do that kind of shit, because you're only worried about yourself. You're not seeing what's out there for free. You're not trying. You're not practicing. You got to get out there, and you got to keep in mind. I forget who I was talking to the other day about this, but like the first on your ride to work, you need to be thinking of what you're going to do for that community that day. That what you need to think. And when you leave work, you need to think of, did I do enough for my community? It's not about, what's for dinner. It's not about, I got to take care of my crew. No, when you're in the firehouse, you take care of your crew. But if you focus on the citizens, Chris Kessinger, citizens first, right?
Yeah.
If you focus on them, your people are already taken care of. If you're focused on those citizens and you learn your building construction, you learn where everything's at, you learn fire behavior, you're already taking care of your people. But we are either we're paid or we're not, but to protect a community. That's what and not because we want to make it easy for us. Like I'm gonna do my right-hand search. 20 years ago, I've done a right-hand search, or it was a right-hand search, and the kid was, if I'd gone left, I would have found the kid probably like that. But we went all the way around that whole damn place. I don't know if we would have affected anything differently, but that sticks with you, man. You're like, because you're making a choice. Left or right. Well, based on what I see, I guess I'm going to go this way. But it's an antiquated way to deal with any kind of search and rescue.
Yeah. And, you mentioned Chris Kessinger, a good friend of mine, great friend of mine. And, there's a lot of excellent instructors out there, him being one of them, Sean Duffy. I couldn't go through the list of excellent search instructors that are out there teaching very well very good search tactics. But, Chris's conference he puts on, the name of it, says it all. Prioritize the search. I mean, honestly, I don't know about other people, but especially young people, if you can take your young people, your new recruits, your rookies, and really drive home what prioritize the search or prioritize any tactic means, it honestly, to me, I don't know if a lot of people think this way, but it's mind-blowing, because once you learn and get some experience under your belt, prioritizing the search tactics, your size up, the statistics of where people likely are depending on the day and the construction, all these things play into live fire layout. All these things play into prioritizing and guiding your decision making to be efficient and professional and productive, that then take away, why did you go left or why did you go right? We got to get past the robotic training. We train. Part of the problem is this, as a fire industry culture, and it's still happening to this day. It's been happening forever. And I'm not going to say in absolutes that everybody's doing it, but there's a huge epidemic of, we put these recruits through fire school. They're not proficient in anything. They learn what these things are. They don't learn the tactics. They learn the awareness of the tactics.
Yeah.
And they're not proficient at them. It's our job when they come to being hired on a fire department to then mentoring and having leadership and discipline and teaching them and getting them to understand and hone their skills past having awareness. They know what, irons are. They know what forcible entry is. They know what stretching a line is, but are they good at it? Are they proficient at it? Are they making a ton of mistakes? Can they do it very well? A lot of them can't. I mean, I'm not going to say there's not rock stars as young kids, and I'm not saying, everybody's in this situation, but we train in our recruit schools we train the basics, I feel, not very well. And then we leave them and throw them to the wolves once they get hired on a fire department and say, you're now blessed. Here's your blessing. You have your fire card. You're now employed. Figure it out. And that's not the right thing to do. Now they're taking real fires and real situations, and then we berate them if you're in a bad culture. Not everybody has good culture, not everybody has bad culture, but if they're in a bad culture environment in a fire department, then they're getting berated because, they're like, why the fuck did you do this? That's stupid. And, now you're beating them down and deflating them and breaking their ability to think cognitively. And once you break their trust, then it's hard for them to really come back to you without feeling like you're going to scold them and say, you're stupid. How do you not know that if they ask a question? And that's a lot of the culture that's being, pushed. And in the fire academy, we have to understand that we have to be searching the basics very well. We don't have the time. We should. That's the other thing. We should have a lot longer, in my opinion, a lot more intense, a lot longer fire recruit schools. And then when they get on a company, a fire department, then they need to really be mentored and have a good leadership they really, in my opinion, once a new recruit, a new person gets hired at a fire department, they really need to go through a rookie school again, of what the SOPs and the culture is and what is the expectations in their fire department. And I think we're selling people short if we don't do that, because now we're just taking a card, a certification, and expecting that every single person is the same type of person and just saying, get it done. And we haven't established our baseline of what is acceptable and what is our SOPs and what is our expectations. And have you really learned this in the fire academy? They've been given a Halligan, and here you go. And this is how you do forcible entry, but have they really done it enough to then go, hey kid, go force this door, search this occupancy, and, blah, blah, blah. It's like, they're going to look at you like, okay, they're going to do it, because there's the culture of shut up and do what you're told to some degree. So then it becomes, are they a liability, doing that? So we have to really back ourselves up and go, are we doing recruits? And there's fire departments doing it right, don't get me wrong. But the fire departments the fire departments that aren't, we really need to really analyze what we're doing to build these people up and make sure that they're the best servants for the community and what the oath they took.
It's a crawl, walk, run approach to training, generally speaking, but for recruits, it's the exact same thing. And a lot of people get hung up, like you said, your firefighter card, like your firefighter one. So when people came out of my academy, they were firefighter 1 and 2, and then state of Indiana makes you a hazmat ops, and then I think we did rope ops. But anyway, you get these little cards, okay, and it says firefighter 1 and 2, and blah blah blah. But people have to stop, and they got to think that is not the finish line. It's a license to learn. It's not, it's the start of something, not the end of something. It's a minimum requirement. That's all that is. And we need to be training these people. And I tell you what, I'm kind of a big fan of a couple of things: emotional intelligence and generational awareness. And it's been proven that Gen X, obviously the best generation, Gen X, go, we're leaving like crazy, and we're being replaced by a much younger generation. So now is the time for the fire service to take that in consideration and maybe relook at how we train them. You have to think about how, because I'm sorry, the way I was trained 30 years ago is not the way that people get trained today. And people could always say, well, it was just times were different back then. No, I was taught stupid shit that was wrong. And when I try to think for myself, I wasn't allowed to. So we got to take this opportunity, start training our people. It's a responsibility we have to have. I get so mad when I would send students out. They've graduated, now they're on a truck. And then I get captains come to me, and I've said this on this podcast before, it drives me nuts. Well, you realize that this guy's never, ever, run a chainsaw before he got on the fire department? I'm like, yeah, we don't like try to hire from lumberjacks. That's not a thing we do. You teach them that, and to me, it's a good thing. Teach them how you want to use a chainsaw, so instead of fighting the generational difference, embrace it. Because if you care about your community, if you care about saving people, which is our whole job, our only job, then you got to take your ego out of the way. And it's been my experience that people like to say this kind of shit and berate you and call you dumb because that's how they were treated. And plus, they probably don't know how to do it any better anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
My 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. We're past the day and age where we're going to berate people and treat them like shit as rookies. I mean, we have to learn to build these, everybody up, and the culture needs to be reinforcement of growth. And I'm not saying there doesn't have to be discipline in the fire service. There absolutely needs to be discipline, but the whole culture of shut up, you're a rookie, only talk when you're spoken to, yelling at people because they're a rookie, berating them, calling them out because they don't know something and they're brand new. That kind of bullshit has to stop, because if you ask me the question with martial arts and fighting that kind of ties into the fire service, that mesh of, if you analyze every world champion or any professional fighter in the world, go back and look at their records, and especially boxing, you can look up Mike Tyson's about to fight again. I don't know why, but huge respect to him. I mean, there's just shouldn't be fighting.
Okay, so let me ask you this: we got to we're doing a timeout. Who's winning that? Is it going to be Jake Paul or is it going to be Mike Tyson?
Here's the sad reality. People are probably going to hate me for saying this, but Jake Paul, as much as I dislike him, is starting to prove himself. And here's what you can't discount: you can't discount youth and eagerness, and he definitely has those. And he's definitely approaching all of his fights with fighting people who are past their prime and using the name to their advantage. And Mike Tyson, I'm not saying any disrespect to Mike Tyson. Huge fan, one of my boxing idols, but he's 57. I'm 43. I feel old. I can't imagine 57 trying to fight a young 20-something-year-old kid who is full of piss and vinegar and training. The kid's a billionaire. He has professional coaches training him 24/7, and he wants it. So he's proving the fight industry wrong. People thought he was a joke, and to some degree, he might be to some degree, but he's definitely putting in a lot of effort to prove that he is a decent fighter. But man, I still would call Mike Tyson winning, but I think that Jake Paul, with youth on his side, I see people saying Mike Tyson's going to destroy him. I don't think that's the case. If you watch Mike Tyson or Roy Jones Jr. A couple years ago, it was not a very good fight. And they were amazing fighters. I mean, they could. Roy Jones.
Iron Mike's just got to get you that one time.
He does.
He just got to get you that one time on the button, man, and that's it.
Mike Tyson only needs to hit you once, and the last thing to go, we all know this in striking and boxing, is your power. But the problem is his age and his stamina, and our techniques, even with the fire industry. Once our stamina goes, our techniques start to fade, and our That's the key is, and he definitely has the basics and everything down to the nth degree. But like, you know, his downfall is going to be if he can keep up with a 20-something-year-old kid, you know. And I think his experience experienced fighters can slow a fight down and make the fighter fight to their fight. And I think if Mike Tyson can do that, he can control the fight. You know, Bernard Hopkins did that very well. Floyd Mayweather did that well. You know, Floyd Mayweather was a master at discipline and a master at making people fight his type of fight. And that's what made him win. And I think Mike Tyson is no different than that. So I think Mike Tyson's going to come out on top. Do I think he's going to come out and knock him out in 10 seconds like people think? No, I don't. You know, it's not prime versus prime. That's the problem, you know? So,
well, anyway. I learned back in the 90s not to buy any Mike Tyson fight on pay-per-view. You just learned. You're like, yeah, no.
Well, he's definitely more mentally stable now. You know, I am a huge fan of Mike Tyson. I think he's definitely and this isn't for everybody, but you know, he's now into, you know, which has helped him smoking weed, and he says it helps him. He's definitely a night and day different person, and he credits it to marijuana and mellows him out. And I think that the new Mike Tyson that we've seen for the past 10 years is definitely a better person. He's not going to eat your children and bite your ear off, but I don't want him to try.
My back.
Yeah,
that's my favorite one.
You know, Jake Paul is young. He's got youth on his side, so you know it'll be interesting to see. But you know, that's the problem with the fight industry, or even you know, bridging the gap with the fire industry is like, you know, that looking at Mike Tyson, people still look at him as the 18-year-old kid that won the world championship, and the fact of the matter is that he isn't. So if you tie that to our tactics and old heads that are in the fire service that say, "Oh, I don't need to learn anything," or I've been on for 37 years," or whatever it is, they tie it back to what they learned 37 years ago, and they still think they're that. And that's where it gets dangerous, and we're past that. So tying those two things from the fire service to the fight service, you know, fight industry is like, you know, we have to be willing to analyze ourselves and go, okay, you know, I'm a firefighter that's, you know, 63 years old or whatever age I am, and I went through fire school whenever 30-something years ago. The tactics have changed, the industry's changed. So you can't sit back and rely on, I'm going to sit in my recliner and I don't need to train. I don't need to do this. I've been working here for this long, when it doesn't work that way anymore.
No. I mean, I've said it here before too. There's 30 years of experience, and there's 30 consecutive first year experiences, right? I know I work with people that if I wanted to learn exactly how it was to fight fire in the late 80s, early 90s, just talk to them. And that's because they still do that shit. You know, it's the same thing. Well, because it comes down to basing our success on lack of failure. Yeah. If they haven't killed themselves or somebody else with their tactics, well, obviously they're doing the right thing. But the Challenger, a Space Challenger, proved that's not even a real thing. I've noticed, and I've kind of got my head around this a little bit better, is that there's some departments that are in this vacuum. They don't allow any information in. They don't go to conferences. They don't support their people doing that. So it's basically, hey, we've always done it this way. Nobody's really died. I mean, we haven't killed too many firemen. So this is the way we're going to keep doing it. And they're resistant to change. They resist the new information. They resist these new tactics and strategies based on science, simply because I think, my opinion is that they're egocentric. They don't want to say, to learn something new sometimes means that you did something wrong in the past, which is not true. You did everything you could at the time.
Yeah.
But it drives me nuts that there's so much great free. I keep bringing up FSRI.org that it's UL's done so much. They've saved so many firefighters' lives and so many civilians' lives, but they don't get any credit for it. And it's all free. You just go on there and you learn it, and you can practice around the firehouse, but people don't really want to do that. It drives me nuts. I want to talk, switch gears a little bit about 1403 because I know you have a strong opinion on live fire. But before we go there, I want to ask you something. As somebody that knows nothing about mixed martial arts, if you were to come at me, could you get through this? Do you think you could actually get anywhere near me with this kind of I mean, I don't think you could.
Probably not, especially with that watch. As soon as I hit that big watch, it's gonna break my hand.
Yeah. And
I
that's part of
mean,
my plan.
yeah.
I got an
I have to
app
go.
on there. It says
I have to go low on you.
punch Todd. Well, then I just drop it. See, you can't. I'm sorry. It's a wall. It's a wall. I'm John Cena. No. No. If anybody that knows me is listening to this, they're going, I'm pretty sure Jake's a pussy. I don't know why he's picking a fight. Oh, well, because it's over the internet. That's what it is. Yeah.
Well, relating
ahead.
to what you just said about, the fire departments that are in their own bubble and they've always done it this way, and they're going to stick to that. There's a lot of people that can coast through a career. There's a lot of fire departments that coast through generations of not really being tested, and you can get the job done. Doesn't mean you're getting a job done well or better or improving. And there's an old study that's been around for quite a while where they did a study on people with self-defense, and the average person that has never been tested or fairly tested in a real fight thinks they will do 400% better in a situation than they actually will. And I truly believe that is the type of fire service you're talking about. That department, they stick in their bubble and they just respond how they're going to respond, but they've never really been tested. Nobody's ever died, like you said. And the fact of the reality is they haven't been pressure tested, and their members haven't been pressure tested, or the department hasn't been pressure tested, and they think they're doing a lot better than they are, or they think they'll do a lot better if that pressure test ever happens, God forbid, where they have a member go down or whatever the case is. So they truly think they're better than what they are, and you have to get outside your bubble. You cannot, for the most part, you cannot keep a department going with just your own inside training and not looking at resources outside and other trainings and analyzing what is out there today. I mean, there's just so many resources and studies and science and training out there. It's why not? Why would you want to stay in a bubble? It doesn't make any sense.
I've always said, a friend said this to me years ago, and it stuck in my brain. A firefighter's blood isn't free. It costs us a lot, and there's no reason why we should have firefighters dying the same way every time, but we still do, right? We still have firefighters dying the same way. We're dying of heart attacks. We're dying of cancer. We're not dying a whole lot of building collapses. We're really not. We're not really burning up all that much. And so if you study the line of duty deaths, if just like you were, I assume you were implying rescue survey earlier, where people are in the house.
Absolutely. Yes.
That is just a gift from heaven for firefighters. If you don't use that and change your tactics or reinforce your tactics based on what Brian Brush has done for you, then you're crazy. But Absolutely. It's the same thing. I mean, it's out there. It's free. Use it, and don't be afraid to be wrong. And don't be afraid. Like, I'm sure that you went into fights that if you lost, you weren't like, oh, that's it, I quit. You're like, I need to work harder. I need to do this better. I need to reinforce this or reinforce that. By the way, do you like how I'm tying in all this boxing and martial arts? It's not on purpose. It is not on purpose.
Love it. It's right in my wheelhouse.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk a little bit about 1403. I know you're a live fire instructor. What are so I'm a 1403 credentialed. I work for ISFSI, which is a International Society of Fire Service Instructors. So I get to go around the country teaching 1403. Having taught it for so long, I see all the great things about 1403, and I see some things that need to be changed in 1403. I'd love to know what you think and how you approach it with your trainings.
I think that, to answer this question the best for my mentality and where I am. I think that what I see, and my opinion is not the end all be all, and I think that you know the average firefighter I see, whether we put on a training class, whether we put on a conference, whether I'm at a conference teaching, whatever the case is, my travels, my experience, what I see a lot of times is, and it relates to 1403, the average firefighter, the feedback you see on the sheets at the end of the class, are the reviews, are bigger, hotter fires, more evolutions. We want more training evolutions. We want bigger, hotter fires. And I don't think that makes a good firefighter. I don't. I think keeping in the capabilities of 1403, I think, the standards are set in place to obviously have safety be paramount, and we have to abide by, safety and that being paramount. But there has to be a trade-off with, again, looking in the mirror and having, being real with yourself and understanding that most of the tactics you don't really need live fire to train in. You can become a very good firefighter supplementing auxiliary training tactics with forcible entry, with search, with stretching lines, with advancing hose lines, with reading smoke, everything A to Z that isn't putting the fire out. So putting
I
the
really
fire
thought you would. I didn't think you'd say that. I really thought you'd say something opposite.
really
I was wrong. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
What'd
I
you
thought you
think?
would say so. So, excuse me. I keep coughing. I apologize. A lot. I just had a penis shortening surgery again. It makes me cough. So, excuse me. Sorry. It's my new joke. I like using it. I thought you would say something to the effect of it's too constrictive. You can't really train under 1403 well. So I was wrong, totally wrong. But
I
I
do.
apologize for that. So
I do think you
what
can
would you
train
change at
well.
1403?
Yeah, I do think you can train well. What would I change? I would change. It would be, and I'm going to come under fire for saying this for some people and some people not, but I do think 1403 should allow for some standardization of use of real victims in a safe manner. How that is applied is obviously generic. I'm generically speaking here, but I do think that we have to train under live fire situations. We have to be safe. We have to have realistic training applicants and dummies. Training dummies are just not realistic. And then if you want to really throw that into live fire training, you don't, again, I'm going to back up. We don't always have to train live fire. So I'm talking a very small profile of your training, but I do think we have to pressure test, putting all the disciplines together to be under stress and have the modalities to remove a real victim and feel what it's like in smoke and fire situation under safe conditions. Right. People miscommunicate or misconstrue that safe means no live fire. But if we're true professionals, live fire is our reality and it's our industry. We operate under live fire and hazardous conditions, and we have to train under those conditions. It'd be like a professional fighter not sparring. It's ridiculous. And there's a way to do it and there's a way to not do it. And that's what we have to differentiate. And people are going to disagree with me and people are going to agree. But the people that are going to disagree or agree, there's terrible training and there's terrible conduction of training, the terrible training officers, there's terrible across the board, and then there's really good across the board too. And
sure,
you can't talk you can't speak in absolutes where we can't get into the weeds in our industry and say, oh, you can't do this under live fire. We threw that out a long time ago because people were dying because of terrible decision making under live fire training. But now we're all paying the price.
no, that's a good point. And I know I happen to know a couple people on the 1403 committee. They've just recently met. They're going to meet again next year. And then the public opinion opens up, I think, in October. So maybe you can help me work this out. Because I agree with you. I agree. Like, what if, you have one end of your building where the fire's at, but you have a live, a live person, say, on the other side, no imminent heat problems. But how would you protect their airway? That's the part I keep coming back to, because if you put them on an SCBA, well, then basically you're just doing RIT training. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've wondered that myself. Now, do you know, or have you met Dave Mellon?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Trained with him a bunch. Yeah, I love Dave. Yeah.
There you go. I mean, he does it, and he does it well. I love Dave, and when I teach 1403 and people bring him up in my classes, when we get to that part, says no live victims, I'm like, oh, you Dave Mellon? I'm like, yes. So I as a 1403 instructor, absolutely do not support that. With that being said, I would go to any of Dave Mellon's classes in a heartbeat. He's the kind of guy that's, sorry, what's going on? He's the kind of guy that's, he's putting himself out there for us. He's putting himself in danger for us. He's being that guy. Could everybody do what he's doing? Probably not. But
Look,
yeah.
Are there ways to train these modalities without smoke and fire? Yeah, absolutely. We have to actually get proficient in dirty drags and victim removal and all sorts of tactics that are realistic and going to create success for us to remove that victim. And we can do those tactics without smoke and live fire mostly, but
Right.
we're not mostly, and we can fine tune those, but then we are not, if you can't do it under smoke and live fire, then I'm not saying we have to have heavy fire, heavy heat, heavy smoke, but we have to pressure test ourselves. And
Sure.
Protecting your airway, I'm going to botch it because, I use them, but I don't remember the name of them wholeheartedly, but it's, I think it was called the last resort, filter that you click into so they're just going to wear a mask and have the last resort filter that came out, I don't know, 15 years ago. I always carried them in my gear, and we use them a lot in training, and they filter. There's a study they did where it filters out everything. And
oh, wow.
And they probably changed their name. I don't remember. I bought a shit ton of them, and we used them. We use them quite a bit, and they're just in foil packs. You click them into your face mask, and they filter everything out. Those work very well, but I get what you're saying. It's a hard thing to train, and we have to protect ourselves. I've been no different than Dave Mellon. I put myself out there with nothing on, and it's terrible. But at the same time, and I regret it every time. But there is a
I regret it every time.
I do, but there is a level of letting people know that the reality of removing a victim that is a real victim with less or no clothes on is a very difficult situation unless you've trained realistically on it. Now, again, we can do much of that training without the live fire and smoke factors, which obviously leads into fake smoke, but there's not a lot, if anything, I really would change on 1403, to be honest. I think that, those parameters are in place for safety, and that's obviously important. And, I think that there's much bigger proponents in the fire service that we need to adopt and change rather than focusing on live fire training or what's not in live fire training. I think there's so many other things we can pick a case at to really nitpick and improve, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Live fire does not need to be part of all of our training. There's some things that are just best not in live fire. With that said, I'm pretty open-minded about doing whatever we can to make the fire service better. And like I said, the few people that I do know on that committee are very progressive, very aggressive, and they're doing everything they can to balance that out. And we do have a voice. Like I said, you can do something on the public opinion and put it out there. I know I'm going to put something in there. The thing that I don't like is admin based, basically, where it says to be the instructor in charge, you have to be a level 2 instructor, which I don't think it should be. I think it should be level 1. You know, it'd be great if you are, but I think that really ties the hands of a lot of departments and a lot of people that want to do live fire, but they don't have any instructor 2s. And sometimes it's just not that simple to say, okay, you go become an instructor 2. You know, it's like you can make anybody an EMT, but you can't make everybody a paramedic. It's just 2 different animals, but that's me. Before we go to the last subject, I want to ask you, I want to tie back to fighting again. Let's say it's about midnight at a bar, and you see me over there. I'm wearing a really tight t-shirt. I've said something disparaging against you. You don't want the smoke, is what I'm saying, right? Would you agree? Would you agree that I'm very physically? You're laughing too much. I'm very physically. Okay, just making sure. That's going to be my transition into the last thing. So, if you notice, fine sir, up in that corner it says Fire Facilities, because my podcast is sponsored by Fire Facilities, makes fantastic training towers. I happen to know of another company that makes really good training towers too. Do you have any idea who I'm talking about?
I don't.
Yeah. So Forge Fire and Company, you make training towers. Now, here's one of the things I love, and I'm not trying to go back and forth with Fire Facilities, like I'm trying to like be that guy. But one thing I love about Fire Facilities is the exact same thing I love about your company, made by firefighters for firefighters. Tell me, how did you come? How did this start?
Well, you know, 3rd generation firefighter. You know, my grandfather was a firefighter and a deputy sheriff in a small town. And then my father became a firefighter. He didn't want to be a firefighter at first. He actually wanted to be in law enforcement. He went to the military, got drafted, went to Vietnam, and then when he got out, he became a firefighter in Vietnam. Still had the chase to be law enforcement. Ended up getting employed briefly at the FBI. Didn't like that. Went back to the fire service and found his calling and wholeheartedly thought he was going to be in law enforcement. And then come to find out he eats, sleeps, and breathes the fire service. Still to this day, 70-something years old, is in the fire service. And he started a company called Fire Force. And, you know, when I became a firefighter, I started to get enough experience to start helping with my dad's company. And his specialties were more into, he was a very good fire instructor, structural, very, very good fire instructor, structural, but he also was in the Air Force for our firefighting, and his specialty was our firefighting, aircraft rescue firefighting, and we gravitated
Same
to
here,
that.
bro.
Yeah. And so he kind of he pretty much is the one that pioneered mobile aircraft rescue firefighting props. Started building his own back in the 70s and 80s, and that morphed into what it is, where it went with Fire Force. And then as I just gained more and more experience, I came on and started gravitating my experience and my thought process with structural firefighting and my strengths into where we went with, Fire Force. And then ultimately, I branched off and started Forge Fire off of that. And it's just a spinoff, same thing, but it's what we do is just, building forcible entry props, roof ventilation props, training buildings, training towers. But I never meant to get into this. I actually was just, I say our DNA, our company DNA is built into instructing, and I still teach and instruct to this day. I love it. And our DNA is built on that. And I built my first forcible entry door simply because I wanted the most realistic training door that we could teach off of. And I hated telling people, hey, do it on this door, but you can't do it. In real life, it's going to be this way, but on this prop, you can't really do it that way. So simulate doing it in this manner. And I never really liked telling people that. So I talked to some of my instructors, and said, man, I think I'm going to try to build my own training props, because my dad and I, we always built all of our training props. He taught me how to weld. He welded. We made full scale mobile aircraft rescue simulators. We built in our own shop and traveled them across the country. And from building those and learning how to just be creative and weld and build different props, it just morphed into, I decided to build my own forcible entry door and build in what I thought would encompass and reinforce the basic tactics that would help people do it right and correct their training tactics and do it correct. But I ended up coming out with the forcible entry door quite a long time ago, and then everywhere I went, it just people asked to buy it. And at first,
now, is this the Alpha door? Is that the first one you made? Is the Alpha?
No, that's Alpha door is like freaking 5.0 of all of them. It still has the core. The Alpha door still has the core of what we started with, which is the real crush area, the quick connect lifting wheels that move the prop. I just basically took what
I see that. That's badass.
Yeah, we really get a lot of good feedback, but I went everywhere teaching with it, the first iterations of my doors, and everybody kept saying, man, I love this thing. Can we buy one? And I just said, sure, I'll build you one. And I just kind of morphed into that, and it just kept growing from there. And I have a very creative mindset, and I just always, my brain never turns off. I'm sitting in my shop right now. This is my home shop, which is my R&D shop. And, it's a full-scale welding shop. It's 10,000 square feet now, and I just sit here and come up with different props and training ideas and put them to life.
I'm looking at the Alpha door, and I want everybody to go to forgefireandcompany.com. Check out the Alpha door. Badass, right? You look at it, you're like, I want it, I need it. I love how you can move it around. But then I want you to go and click the Bravo door. That thing is intimidating. That looks badass as well. That thing looks like this looks to me like if you wanted a door that you could not force. You wanted, I mean, that looks like a tough one.
And it's the Alpha door. We just renamed it. It's the Alpha door. We just bolted into our training building. So it's the same prop.
Look at that thing. It looks like it'd be, well, I see what you're saying, but it looks intimidating. It looks intimidating. You got Apex roof fit prop. You got a mobile Apex roof fit prop. Let's look at your training structures here. I was looking at them earlier. You got so many options. I mean, honestly, you could, if your goal is to have some great fire training, like Seacans, Connex boxes, you have so many different ways to do this. Now, I see one called the Colony and the Colony 2. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Does that have anything to do with Texas? Do we need to tell Chief Scott Thompson?
The Colony was built for the Colony, Texas. Chief Scott Thompson and Justin Fraze and all those great guys out there. We built that prop, that training structure for them recently. And then my brain never turns off, so I made a part 2 of where I would go with it. And so, we built that one probably 6 months ago. We built them all over the nation, and we are just always trying to push the envelope of what bridging, training versus reality, and what can we accomplish with allowing the guys to just reinforce the most realistic basic tactics and then advance it into advanced tactics, just really bridge that gap of what we focus on. And I think we're obviously heavy into forcible entry, roof ventilation, search. But there's a room for all of us. There's a lot of other builders out there that do a good job too. And I think that's the great thing is a lot of us are putting out some great products and props. And at the end of the day, it's not about business. It's about what our products are doing, and it's helping the community. It's helping train the firefighters. It's helping train the people that are buying our props, and what are they getting out of it? That's the end result. That's the most important.
I'm looking at, so my department had Connex style from, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. I think it was new. But the problem I ran into with mine was it was always a Connex box. You knew the layout. Now I'm looking at the Colony first level plan. And if you showed me these plans, I would not believe it was a Connex box. It is laid out like a house. You're not going to go into this and think, well, okay, I'm going to be in the C-can. You're going into a very well laid out plan. And they look badass too. I'm not going to lie. I want everybody to go here and check these out. And then afterwards go to Fire Facilities, see what else. See what's got.
Absolutely.
These look fantastic, brother. And
there's so many great products. There's so many great products out there. There's a lot of companies doing great things, and that's what makes our industry work, because, you know, there's so many great instructors giving different takes, just as well as there's so many great companies out there putting out their take on what we're trying to accomplish. And again, not speaking in absolutes, there's Fire Facilities, there's other companies out there doing very good things, and they're all contributing to the end goal of what it's all about. The oath we're taking as firefighters, and the end result of creating the best product for to problem solve the people's emergencies. And, you know, we just, you know, our take on it is we just, you know, try to put out the most realistic layouts, and we try to have everything modular so that you can change the different types of layouts and features throughout the life of the prop. And I think that's what our side of where our direction is going. But yeah, there's absolutely room in the industry for a lot. I see a lot of great things always coming out that we're not doing too. And that's what's great about going to fire conferences and seeing what's out there.
I'm looking at the Mooresville too. So y'all need to listen, go check this out. Look at the Mooresville. That one I really like. A lot of great stuff here, and I hope people go there and check it out. Yeah, I mean, to your point. Yeah, you know, there's plenty of room. You and I were talking prior to about one of the things about Fire Facility that I like is that red iron steel.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm looking at your stuff, and I love the layout, man. That Colony, I figured that must have been, because I remember Chief Thompson posting, and I looked at that and like, that looks awful good. But yeah, so go check out forgefireandcompany.com. Check out the training structures, Forcible Entry doors, the burn props, and of course the training resources. Excellent website, great products. I guarantee you. I know I've burned in your towers. I just can't think. I go all over, so I cannot tell you.
We have a lot of them out there.
Is it Hawaii? Put them in Hawaii and then send me out there, and I will help you burn out in Hawaii.
Hawaii, if anybody's watching from Hawaii, please hire us. We're still waiting for that one. You know, we did do Miami.
Yeah, it's going to be Greenland.
Miami was great.
Miami?
We just did Hialeah. So Hialeah's in Miami. That was a great build we did, and the you know, great department, great group of guys, and great obviously great weather down there. It's a suburb of Miami. That was a fun one we just finished. But yeah, you know, it's really, you know, whether you're in the fire service as a firefighter, whether you're in business like myself and other companies, you always have to have what we call in, like, you know, the fight industry or Brazilian jiu-jitsu is you know, you may be a black belt. I have black belts in different disciplines, and I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, but you have to have the white belt mentality always. You have to constantly be striving and looking for knowledge and not think you know everything. And that lends itself to firefighting, business, whatever the case is, as growth as a person. And I think, you know, there's a lot of companies out there and individuals and firefighters doing that very well. And, you know, that's what we're constantly striving for. It's just, I still go to fire conferences and sit through so many lectures I've already sat through and learned new things, or a lecture I've never been to. And, you know, I did 20 and out. I left the fire service 2.5 years ago, and I'm still find myself sitting through lectures all day, and I don't have to, you know, it's just, I want to learn still.
See, I got to correct you. I got to push back on this because as a newly retired person, I say I left the fire department. I didn't leave the fire service. That I will
Sure.
never, ever,
Yeah.
ever retire from. I love it.
Yeah.
And your passion shows through. One of the first times I saw you, I was like, I've got to talk to that guy. And it's been a fantastic conversation. I'm afraid I scared you a little bit because I could be kind of fast. I don't know if I'm not trying to intimidate you, but I do want to wrap up with the way we always wrap up on 3 Point Firefighter. And that is, can you tell me the best firehouse prank you've ever played or have had played on you?
I have a pretty good one. We were sitting at the firehouse one day on duty. It was a slow time in the afternoon, drinking coffee, and I had one individual that was on my company kind of bragging about how he was hard to play jokes on and how he wouldn't fall susceptible to them. And we're sitting there across from each other in the lounge chairs, and I can see the view of the outside parking lot through the windows, and he doesn't recognize that I sit there while he's talking to somebody else. And this is a long time ago in the day and age of Craigslist when it was hot and heavy. And I snapped a picture of his Toyota Corolla, his 1997 Toyota Corolla, and I posted it on Craigslist and said his name, posted his real name, his real phone number, and wrote this big long story about how he inherited the car from his grandma and he's got his use out of this car and it's time to pass it on to somebody else. And please call me and tell me why you think you should get my car for free. And I'm ready to give you my car for free. And as soon as I hit post on Craigslist, and I'm talking like 45 seconds later, his phone didn't stop ringing thousands and thousands of times for the rest of the 24-hour shift. He was pissed, and and that was a pretty good one. I feel pretty proud about that one. I feel pretty shitty now that I'm older because that was quite a long time ago. Of the people that probably wanted that car and reading that story and calling him. I never thought about it from that perspective, but now that I'm older, I'm like, shit, man, these people probably needed that car. But
yeah, so mom on food stamps sees it and she's like, oh, my answer or my prayers have been answered. And there you are, just kind of being a dick.
yeah. Oh yeah, he was pissed. He wanted me to pay. He brought his I almost got written up over it. And then he went to the lieutenant, and the lieutenant was definitely on his side. He brought in his cell phone bill, his data bill, and said he went over his data, and he tried to make me pay like $300 for his data bill. And
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that sound effect of that alone is great.
Yeah.
300 back then when you had to pay, you didn't have unlimited minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, when he had, Sprint or whatever the hell it was, and on his flip phone, his phone didn't stop ringing it was probably 3,000 calls.
I love it. That's a good one. That's a real good one. I like that one. That might go down in one of my top 10 favorites. Well, brother, I appreciate your time on here. I had high expectations and they were all met tonight. So thank you for being on the show. Thanks for sharing everything. I've had a blast. I hope you've had a blast too, brother.
Yeah, I've had a blast and I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. It's a great podcast. I've watched quite a few of yours, so I definitely appreciate you having me on. It's a great thing you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, brother. It means a lot. You stay safe.
Thank you. You too.
Today's podcast was sponsored by Fire Facilities, industry-leading designers and manufacturers of realistic, built-to-last training structures for more than 30 years. Make your training count. Visit firefacilities.com for more information.